that the president of CalPERS back in April of 1997 warned you that they have given up on the country. They are moving all the money out starting in the fall. What does that mean? How did you interpret that at the time, and
Well,
what have you
I
since come
at
to
the
understand?
time, what I thought he meant, I was presenting a proposal to a leading group of pension fund leaders who were very interested in rebuilding the U.S. economy and sort of getting the U.S. economy on a sound foot. And I had done incredible deep diving and looking at the U.S. government budget and the U.S. economy by place. So America breaks down to 3,100 counties. And what we had discovered was that the government money had a negative return on investment and could easily be re-engineered to a positive in a way that would create enormous capital gains on the real estate and the economy and could really help the pension funds make their targets, because the great concern at that time was how would the pension funds, sort of support the boomers in their old age. And so we had rolled out an entire presentation on this reengineering of the government budget and doing it place by place in 3,100 counties in a way that would produce huge capital gains for the pension funds and take care of the boomer retirement, sort of rejuvenate, it was sort of a 1997 version of Make America Great Again in the face of globalization and what globalization was doing to employment. So the president of CalPERS, who was one of the members, froze and he said, this was Alinsky's plan and they stopped him. And I said, well, what we're talking about is now we have technology that can radically increase learning metabolism in communities that can create enormous equity wealth. And he froze and he looked at me and he said, you don't understand. It's too late. They've given up on the country. They're moving all the money out starting in the fall. He said, you've got to get to Nick, meaning Nick Brady, who'd been the former Secretary of the Treasury, who'd been the chairman of Dillon Read, where I was a partner. He said, you've got to get to Nick and tell them that it's not too late. It's not hopeless. And I thought he meant, James, that they had given up on investment in the country and they had given direction to all the pension funds to reallocate equity to investment in the emerging markets as part of globalization. And so I thought he meant that the pension funds were going to shift equity and the big investors and the big school endowments, foundation endowments were going to shift their allocation from U.S. domestic equity to global equity, and not just to the developed markets, but to the emerging markets. So I just thought he was talking about legal reallocation of legal monies. And then what happened was we discovered when he said it's starting in the fall is the beginning of the federal fiscal 1998 year. When the fiscal 1998 year closed, what we discovered was fantastic amounts of money were going missing from HUD. Now, the reason I was focused on HUD is having been a leader of the reform of HUD information systems technology and financial and legal arrangements, I knew that there was no reason for HUD's books to not be absolutely perfect. HUD had the resources, it had the laws, it had everything it needed to have perfect books. Why would fantastic amounts of money start to go missing? And at the time, I had a Senate staffer complain to me, the chief of staff to the senator who was in charge of the appropriation committee for HUD, that HUD was, quote, being run as a criminal enterprise. Now, what you need to understand is HUD is run essentially by the Treasury Department, the Department of Justice, the New York Fed member banks with JP Morgan Chase in the lead, and a group of big IT contractors at that time, Lockheed Martin, DynCorp was in there. And so you can't run HUD as a criminal enterprise unless they intentionally are organized to run it that way, which I later came to believe. So what we saw was not a movement of the overt equity out of the U.S. What we saw was a covert movement of massive amounts of money being pulled out of the United States to be reinvested. Your guess is as good as mine. I think some of it was reinvested in Asia, as he said it would be. But I think some of it really represents an explosion of the covert side of the national security state and a real vision of, okay, we can run the planet on a unipolar model using the national security state, and the war on terror is basically a way to assert control of all resources globally. You're looking at a command and control model for all resources, and that necessitated dramatic increases in movements of our military globally, which is exactly what happened.